Hello, everybody. Here's another episode of People of Media, and first, I want to tell you a little bit before we get to Kelsey Thomas, who's going to be our guest today. I want to tell you a little bit about why we do this. So this all fits under our Media Data Collaborative sandbox. The Media Data Collaborative is a way that we're trying to serve the media industry through hardcore, beneficial discussions about data and revenue. And so that's my platform. That's what I talk about. And so the culture of the Media Data Collaborative is that it's a rising tide. So that's our biggest kind of culture word for why we do what we're doing is a rising tide lifts all boats. And so we believe that if we're doing our best to benefit people within media and facilitate conversations, that it's going to rise the tide for everybody else around us. And so we want to benefit media in that way. And then one of our core principles is getting concrete. And so this is an opportunity for us to get concrete with Kelsey about things that she's specifically doing in the world and that her organization are doing to generate revenue from data, which is what we're all about. So with that, we're going to jump right in. The reason I picked Kelsey Thomas, who's the corporate marketing director at VistaGraphics, which is the parent company of Coastal Virginia Magazine, Lynchburg Living, and several other lifestyle properties, is that they're doing something unique there. And I like to pull on the thread when I see something unique. And so she has kind of a unique role and unique position within the company. And although her title is formally corporate marketing director, she really works with the sales team in this realm of being both project manager and marketer and kind of marrying those two roles. And so once I've gotten to see her in action, where they work with us on some of our projects, I've gotten to see her impact on those projects. And so I reached out and said, hey, Kelsey, can we talk and can I educate others a little bit more about your role? And so with that, Kelsey, thank you for being with us today. Sorry to make you wait so long.
You're fine. Thank you for having me, Johnny.
All right, so so to start with, I would like to hear your passion and your mission.
Sure. So I've really kind of been in touch with my creative side just about my whole life. I grew up as a competitive dancer, went to performing arts high school, studied dance in college, and then that's kind of where I started getting into creative writing. So kind of with these passions, I realized storytelling is really my niche. And whether it's storytelling through creative movement with my body or whether it's putting a pen to paper. That's something that I just kind of found is really my favorite thing to do. So as I kind of developed here at Coastal Virginia Magazine, that passion really transformed into marketing. It's still storytelling, but how can I do it through social media, email, programmatic targeting, really all these different avenues that I can tell stories in different ways. So really my mission is to kind of make a difference in people's lives, tell stories, and make an impact.
Awesome. Awesome. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to have you talking with us today, because I think what you're doing in your particular mixture of giftings, and she did take I have a superpower quest. Some of you know I'm an author. I wrote a book called The Superpower Quest, and she took that survey for me to get an even deeper sense of why she's effective at her job. And it turns out she does have that creativity and that leadership that equip her for the role. So let's talk a little bit more, Kelsey, about how your role developed within the organization, because it seems like it was kind of organic. And so what was the journey?
Yeah, it was definitely an organic build. This is my third year here. So I started previously as a web content manager. So really everything from updating websites and running all the social media accounts to helping with editorial and things like that. And then I also ran all of the contests, which is how I kind of got familiar with top doctors, top lawyers, and all of that. But as my role progressed, it was evident that it was a lot more than just a web content manager. I became somebody who was really facilitating communication between our outsourced partners, Data Joe especially. And with that, my CEO came to me, Randy Thompson, and he made a very great point. He said, we're in an age where people don't want to be sold anymore. They want to be in charge of the decision. And so that concept is kind of what catapulted to my position now into corporate marketing director. We realize there's a lot more storytelling that has to go in behind getting people to sign on. And at the end of the day, we want them to feel like the ball is in their court, instead of just asking for them to come visit us over and over again. So kind of how my role progressed with that is I became somebody who created a lot of marketing plans for every package we sell, whether it's contests, special sections, or just our digital products that go align with our print. And I pretty much do outreach efforts. So our sales team is still calling on these people. They're still doing everything that your typical sales team is trained to do. But I step in first and I tell the story of what this product is, why it's important, and how it can help them. So I would say I'm really a lead warmer. And it's pretty unique because at the same time that I'm doing this back end corporate marketing side, I'm also in charge of the public branding side. So I'm still maintaining all of those social media pages, engaging with our audience, and making sure our audience realizes why our product is good. Because at the end of the day, who wants to advertise in a magazine with no loyal audience? Nobody. So it's a full circle position of combining both sides together.
All right. So now that sounds like a lot. So do how do you do all that as one entity? Um, and let me summarize. You're talking about a brand. You know, you're the guardian of the brand via social media and all these other channels.
Mhm.
And you're also taking care of this kind of lead, what you described as lead warming, and what you talked to me about as ground softening for the
Mhm.
sales team. So, do you find it difficult to do all that within a?
Um, It can be a balance. I really describe my job as like a fine dance between both worlds. Really, they coincide with each other. So the more I let them coexist together and work together, the easier it becomes. So really what I'm promoting to the public of what's going to come up in our next issue, I'm still taking that message and promoting it to our leads and our prospects. It's just communicated a little bit differently. So the more I've been able to blend these, it's gotten easier, but we have started to build a marketing team. So a lot of the hands-on is kind of being taken away from me. I'm a little bit more of a director role on the public side. So I have some social media managers and contest managers now who've kind of taken the reins with that.
Yeah. All right. So that makes sense. So you have it's not that you don't have help,
Correct.
right? So good. So corporate marketing director. The director means that you actually do have people that are reporting to you that you actually are in authority over. Is that
Correct.
true? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. So that also makes sense. I'm gonna have some questions about that I think later in terms of how a smaller publication might execute that
Sure.
or execute a part of that without having the whole show like you guys have. But I think I'm going to stay here for a minute in just showing why this role matters and why it's important. So would you mind speaking to that a little bit? Like imagining to yourself for a minute, there are publishers out there, magazine publishers out there that don't have this role or any equivalent. So kind of picturing that, what would you say to somebody in that situation about the value of this role and why it's necessary?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely an extremely important role to have. I came from a background that was not a sales background. So bringing my marketing experience to the table was really, it was able to elevate our messaging. And with that, you keep mentioning this project manager role, which I didn't specify as much in my summary, but I very much do that as well. So with everything that we're doing, I'm also leading our sales team. Alongside our president, Paul, who they all report to. I'm kind of being the liaison between what our packages are, what they mean, and making sure they're well educated on our package, because if they don't know the package, the message to the advertiser isn't going to relay properly. An example of this would be all of our lists that we sell. Top lawyers, top doctors, top agents, all of those lists. I would kind of consider myself a translator a little bit. I work a lot with the outsourced team, and then I kind of bring it to more simpler layman terms for our internal team for them to then make it in even easier terms to our advertisers. So it's basically a huge game of telephone. If the message is misconstrued throughout, the message will be lost. So the project manager role is a huge side that I have. And if somebody isn't there to kind of make sure that message is clear and concise throughout the whole process, it's very easy to lose that message and lose those clients. So, yeah.
That's a great answer, and it's profound. What you just said, I think, is profound because you said translator. I'm just circling that in my notes. Like
Mhm.
you said, you're a translator, and as you were saying that, I was writing down, you're the steward of the story. You're the advocate of the story. The story needs, first of all, there needs to be a story. Like that's going back to what Randy was telling you. People
Mhm.
want story, right? People don't want to be sold. They want to be invited,
Exactly.
and you do that through story. And so you're the advocate of the story, which I think marketing at its best is that, right? It's
Yep.
it's, it's excellent storytelling. Um, and so, but you're not only the steward of the story or the advocate of the story for the people out, for the client, for the prospective client. You're also the steward of the story for your team, for the sales team, and for your internal team
Mhm.
to make sure that everybody has the same understanding and grasp on what the story is, right? And in this case, it's probably value proposition, right? Value,
Yeah.
value proposition, and and then making sure that from every element of the organization, the story's coming through loud and clear for the client. So I can see why that's incredibly important because
Mhm.
it's clarity. That's what I would call it. It's clarity. Let me write that down.
Absolutely. And I would say having a good scope of both sides and why and how both sides coexist. Both sides, I mean the public side and the more internal corporate side. The better our sales team understands the public side, the easier it's going to be for them to make that sale. All day they can quote, our stats and this is our audience, this is who we got, but we can say this is what we shared on social media. This is where you will be. These are the people that you're talking to. Look at this engagement on social media. Um, and really understanding our audience and our first party data is key to making sure that we can have success for our clients.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this distills it right down into why this is essential, is because you're basically decreasing the chasm between the sales team and the advertiser, right? You're totally doing that every day. It's because you described it as softening the ground, right? So when
Right.
they're going into the battle, someone was already in the battle ahead of them, softening the ground, preparing the way, putting the message out. So people have gotten the message a couple different times before the salesperson even approaches them,
Exactly.
right? And you're also lessening that distance because you're saying you're equipping the sales team with the language with effective language to go out and simply relate the story and the value to the prospect.
Along with that too, something I do often for our sales team is I'll make templates. So if we have, a list that's upcoming to sell, and maybe we're in the initial process and we want those clients to participate in the nomination process, I will write up email templates for our team so that they can really just plug in their client info and keep it moving. But it's this more personalized message of, hey, this is what we have going on. Here's why you should be a part of it. Here's the link to it. And really giving them a more conversational approach
Yeah,
of why they want to be in that.
yeah, yeah. And do any of the are those email templates as well, where they can give people like direct access right back to some of those opportunities to take action?
Yep. So I usually will send like a Word document to our team of one or two different templates they can use. The links are usually in there so they know exactly where to go. And then I also do sometimes call scripts as well to kind of keep them on track of touch points that they can bring up throughout the talk.
100%. So if you're, and I think what your organization is showing by having you in the seat that you're in is how much they value the salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they value the salesperson so much that they wanted to have a person in a role who basically can unleash them and multiply their effectiveness instead of them having to start from zero and just scratch it out, which I think is the experience of a lot of salespeople, is that they've
Mm-hmm.
got to start from zero every month and they've got to go scratch it out. What must it feel like them psychologically to have somebody that's in their corner who's going out and kind of fighting, beginning to fight the battle for them on their behalf? Battle's probably a bad metaphor because you're not against the prospect, right? You're trying to bless the prospect. But just like I picture, if you use the war metaphor, you're in the trenches with
Right.
and caring for them and like, okay, let me make sure you have the right instruments and make sure you have, we all have know what the commands are from on high, and let's make sure we all know so that we can be effective when the battle starts. Is that a fair way to
Yeah,
describe
I would say that you're spot on. Yeah.
and so I'll just talk about an example real quick to make this as concrete as I can make it. You know, this was just a couple months ago. This is why I even reached out to have this interview. Was that we're doing the research for your top realtors campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a misunderstanding about the data that was needed from firms to participate, and you noticed that there was a disconnect between the team and us in terms
Mm-hmm.
of what, and it was affecting their conversations with, because the first stage of sales, to be honest, is this outreach
Right.
data. Like that's the first positive contact that they have with the sales team, because
Right.
they help us, they help collect the data. And so you said, stop, time out. You called a meeting and you just nipped it in the bud, and we all got on the phone together and we talked it out and we
Mm-hmm.
figured out where the misunderstanding was and we eliminated the misunderstanding. Um, and I'll never forget. So when it was over, because usually I'm the dude that writes the summaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it's over, I look at, I come back, I'm like, okay, I should probably go write the summary now. I look back, Kelsey had already written this detailed, beautiful summary of everything that we had covered in the call to make sure that everybody had perfect understanding and we could all be on the same page. And to some degree, I think that saved the project. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at least saved who knows what amount of revenue from the project because of the internal getting the story right.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to commend you and brag on you a little bit on that because
Thank you.
let me even ask you, what happens when there's not somebody who's watching the whole process and the whole situation and calling timeout? Like, I mean, I don't know if you've seen that before. I've seen it before, but how would you answer that question? What happens if somebody doesn't see it?
I would see the sales team misrepresenting the project from the beginning, which was really what I was trying to eliminate. Because if it's misrepresented, then when it's time for the results, it's kind of unclear on the understanding and the weight of what that achievement carries for the people who make that list. So I think really making sure everyone is on the same page and thinking of them not being on the same page gives me a little bit of anxiety, I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
because yeah, I would say after that phone call, I have seen our team calling people. They know exactly what they're saying. I provided a template in that summary as well of what they should be saying to their clients in addition to our summary. And I noticed that it really helped the team have a full understanding of it from beginning to end, not just once the list lands in their lap. Um, and that's really key. Like you said, the storytelling behind it. If the story is not clear and concise, they're going to be confused at the end of the day, which will just make our client confused.
yeah,
So
yeah,
definitely eliminated a lot of confusion.
yeah. Yeah, and it's almost so simple. Like what's your it's simple, but it's complex. The simplicity is I almost feel silly saying it, but if you don't have someone whose job it is to bring people together under a clear mission and execution plan, then your results will always be subpar,
Right.
right? I have a friend named Jerry Scott who used to be the publisher of a regional magazine in Texas, and he told me, I hope I get this right, Jerry. If you're watching, I hope I get this quote right. You said, "Inspect what you expect. Inspect what you expect." Meaning, if you don't inspect something, then don't expect anything, right?
Right.
If you expect a good outcome, you better be inspecting that element to make sure that it has clarity. Otherwise, don't have an expectation of a good outcome. And so I see that principle here, right? Like this is the investment in your role is an investment in the clarity of the sales team, the confidence of the sales team, and the persuasiveness of the sales team.
Exactly. With the obvious end goal of generating more revenue at the end of the day. Um, and I would say too, it's really important to note that in these processes, our sales team is great. They
Yep.
know what they're doing. They're talented. We have a great team.
Yep.
So it's not, my role doesn't discredit them in any
Right.
way. It's
Right.
more so playing on their strengths and helping, like you said, clarify the communication, because when there is so many hands involved and so many parties involved, going back to the game of telephone, it starts to turn into one thing and turns into something else. So yeah, it's pretty important. I would say it's like an anchor. It kind of keeps the ship sailing or from sinking.
Yep. Yeah, we keep coming back to this, but complexity is the enemy, right?
Yep.
It's the enemy of communication. If I'm complex in my communication, the chances that I'm going to persuade you are way lower.
Right.
Simple, and that's what you're bringing is simplicity to the team. So I absolutely love that. So can you tell me some of the outcomes? Like from being in the role. Yeah. What are some of the visible, tangible, measurable outcomes that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of been in this new process for about 5 months now. So still fairly new, but it has been going extremely well for us. Just with lifestyle alone, this process of me kind of softening the ground for our sales team and warming up the leads, we've seen 100 new business prospects coming in off of form fills directly from my outreaches. So that's not even including the ones that our sales team are following up with. Kind of what our process looks like is, I send this outreach, I tell the story, I'm hitting probably that first 2 to 3 touch points with the clients. Really, we want them to be touched 5 to 8 times for it to really be successful. So the sales team is filling in those gaps. They follow up, hey, you probably saw this email from my colleague Kelsey. Let's dive into it a little more. Let's get into the specifics of how it impacts you directly. Um, so yeah, the process definitely works.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so did you just tell me that your goal is to create 5 to 8 touch points prior to the salesperson ever entering the fray? Is that what you just said? Or no?
Usually, so sometimes it depends on the scale of the project. So if we're launching a brand new project from the start and we need to hit the ground running, then yes, I do hit them that much. But typically I'm hitting them 2 to 3, and the sales team is filling in the gaps to fit in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With hopefully by the time they get to 6, it's an appointment and they're face to face. But definitely frequency is the key. We want to remind them because they'll see it and be like, oh, that's cool. But then tomorrow they're
Yep.
on to something else. So the more we can remind them and get it in their face in a personalized, creative way, rather than a forceful, you need to do this way,
Yep.
the more open they have been to
Yeah.
having these conversations.
It's so simple and it's so genius. I mean, honestly, I'm just I'm grateful. I'm in awe. I'm impressed. Like there's a part of me that's just like, of course that works. This is playing. to how people work in the digital age, and maybe how people work just primally across history. Like we're story driven creatures. That's why I love that story brand framework. Are you familiar with the story brand
Mm-mm.
marketing framework? You're not.
No.
Oh my
Enlighten
goodness.
me.
Okay, so it's yeah, like I don't have a lot of confidence that I'm gonna be able to enlighten you on marketing because you're a marketer and I'm not. But Story Brand is a book, and I'll send this book's on me, so I'll send you this book.
All
Um,
right. Thank
uh,
you.
and it's by a guy named, oh gosh, dude, this is you just look it up online and it's there. Building a Story Brand by my computer. Donald Miller. All right, so Donald Miller, and it's this marketing framework that basically patterns the hero's journey. So, are you familiar with the hero's journey? You ever heard of that?
Yes, I
Okay.
have
So
heard that.
Joseph, it comes from Joseph Campbell, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and it talks about how across cultures throughout time there have been these elements that cultures just agree are heroic, and that
Mm-hmm.
there's a story, and that there's that in every culture there are these common elements of of story and what a hero is up against and what a hero is ultimately trying to accomplish. Well, basically, he overlays that with the marketing process and says the biggest mistake we make is that we position ourselves in the story as the hero, right? Like Coastal Virginia Magazine, you position yourself as the hero and and your client as the one that needs to be rescued, instead of positioning your client as the hero and you're the wise sage who's come alongside them, like you're Yoda, right? You're Yoda to Luke, to come alongside them. And so it's basically a whole framework of thinking about sales as a story, or as marketing as a story driven endeavor, and then
Yeah,
bring that concrete like hero's journey story framework to impact the entire thing.
I love that.
You will love it. Like I said, I'll buy you the book. You can shoot. Let me know your address once we're done recording. But I'll send that to you. And I just think whatever you've got going, it's interesting because I thought you already read the book based on how you talk about marketing.
Oh,
So it's only going to unlock that
I'm
10%.
excited. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, it's a good book.
I would say too, a big thing with our process is, it's definitely key to have somebody in this role, but it's not ultimately everything isn't up to me. Like if our sales team wasn't following up with these people, if they just said, "Oh yeah, Kelsey's reaching out to them, the leads will come to me,"
Yeah,
then our revenue would not be growing right now. But it's definitely a team effort. And we achieve this by having meetings, talking about my marketing plan. And as long as everybody on the team is on board, it's going to be successful.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're in the place where you can predict success because you created the system
Right.
that yields a repeatable result.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. I think we're
Mhm.
all trying to do that. Like my buddy David LaFontaine likes to say, it's as simple as everybody needs a plan to turn $1 into two.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, I think that's true. I'm also going to give a shout out to Amy Scott. Like you got to check out her interview. Uh,
Yep.
Amy Scott, VP of Sales over at 417 Magazine, who has enlightened me many times. I've talked with her many times. I've interviewed her a couple times, and I'd say the takeaway from my interviews with her is similar to the takeaway here. She's a sales genius, and she's one of the best ones out there doing it. And she talks about how much it's about process, about
Mhm.
repeatable process, and the discipline of consistency within that process.
Yep.
And she's even talked to me in terms of touch points. Like I love that you're trying to touch people 5 to 8 times, and that's both through marketing and sales, right? So combining those,
Mhm.
and that 5 to 8 times should yield an appointment, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the goal. So it's not even the conversion for you is the appointment,
Mhm.
and then there's another.
Well, conversion for us would be the deal, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, as most of the time, if we can get in front of them, it's usually a good outcome,
yeah,
especially with a lot of the lists, because, these are prestigious people. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're busy. So it's hard to get in front of them. So any appointments that we can get, that's a small win that usually leads to a big win.
Yeah, yeah. This is so good. So we're kind of coasting towards the finish line. And so there are a couple things. And now, again, one of my goals is to be concrete because I want, people in media that are watching this to leave with a couple of actual takeaways and even baby steps, right?
Mhm.
Because again, it might not be that you can afford to hire a Kelsey right now. So if you can't afford to hire a Kelsey, then what do you do to begin to fill in that gap that we've identified here, which is creating clarity and confidence for the sales team, like somebody who's in their corner
Mhm.
going before them and softening the ground so that they have the smallest possible gap between their organization and the advertiser, the prospective advertiser, right? So, what advice would you give to to publications that don't have someone like you, um, but need what you provide,
Mhm.
and need to take a baby step? What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, of course, number one is start with the analysis. What's working on your team? What's not? If it's not working, what is the reason for that? Is it the product is too confusing to understand? Is it the sales team has a lot lack of knowledge of the product, which makes it more difficult to sell? Is it the frequency and how many times you're reaching them? So once you nail down that problem, that will really help be able to solve that step. So if there's somebody not like me in place, I would say look within your company. Look to see who is excelling, who knows your products, and who has the potential to kind of help guide the team and make those decisions. In my case, I was already experiencing half of these products on a daily basis. So it was a very simple and easy transition. Um, and then once that person is there, making sure they know the importance of the leads. Somebody who didn't have a sales background, I knew leads were important, but this was really the first time I was warming people up and I was really understanding the lead generation process. So
Yep.
somebody who can see both sides, who can really analyze the public side, the need of our products to the public, and how the advertisers fit into that need to, one, help build our brand in our book, but also their message that they want to get to our readers. So somebody who can really understand that and communicate with the team and really translate into the easiest possible words for them, is really, really key. And usually you're going to find that talent within your company already.
All right, there we go. All right, I love it. So those are and that was two tactical pieces of advice. The
Mhm.
first one you said was analysis, and so I love that. I'm gonna put a little flesh on that too. So when you say analysis, I think what you mean is you can't fix a problem until you've named a problem,
Exactly.
right? So you have to go through a process, and nobody can avoid the work of going through a process to discover what the problem is. I remember we did this at my company probably 7 years ago, where we were like trying to analyze what's the problem with our company, like where are we lacking, where are we struggling. We got honest, like we had a retreat, we got
Mhm.
honest. Let me tell you something. We start asking ourselves all these questions. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why? All of a sudden, all eyes start to turn to me, right? And it turned out like I was the problem in my company,
Oh no.
and nobody was mean about it, but the data just left no doubt. I was over promising, I was over committing, I was doing all these things, and I was also getting entrenched in processes and becoming a bottleneck. And so
Yeah,
time after time we come back to this, and it was like we fixed it. We fixed it, but we could never have fixed it if we wouldn't have named it.
right.
And never would have named it if I hadn't created an environment where people were safe to bring criticism.
Exactly. Yeah. That's key because if you're in a situation where people aren't comfortable to say what's working and what's not, the issue's not going to get fixed. So you're spot on with the environment. That's something, I mean, we weren't struggling, but we just had goals that we wanted to meet. And that's something that we analyzed. And, that's how Randy came to terms with, these people don't want to be sold anymore. So
Yeah,
how can we change our processes to meet their demand in a more creative way?
yeah, yeah. And shout out to Randy for seeing that, right? Because seeing that at the highest levels of the organization and then being able to face that reality and then change to accommodate that reality, that's what's necessary for survival and thriving.
Hmm.
Like we gotta look at the Good to Great book. It talks about looking at the squiggly things under the rock, like looking at the things you're scared to look at, and looking at them full faced and being willing to address them, right?
Hmm.
Instead of shoving them down into the closet. So that's huge. And then the second thing you said was look within. Look within, because it's not necessarily about going and hiring somebody. It could be restructuring somebody's role to
Hmm.
where they're doing something like this because you're actually looking for a gifting.
Exactly.
And I want you to add to this. I would describe the gifting that you're looking for this role as somebody who has some form of marketing, storytelling, passion, and understanding, right? Like somebody who believes in the power of good
Hmm.
story, good messaging, good marketing, and has some ability to create clarity with their words. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think if the person in that position doesn't believe in it and, isn't willing to go the extra mile to learn how to market to these people, there's no point for them to be there. So it really starts with their passion and their dedication to, and belief in the product itself. And then exactly like you said, being able to communicate clearly and concisely and being able to take this marketing background that they have and learn how to utilize it to different audiences.
Yes.
Because really, when you think about it, we're sending the same message, we're just saying it differently. So the same message is going to our readership, that's going to our sales team, that's going to our advertisers. It's just the way it's explained is slightly different from each
Yes.
person.
Yep. And so then the second thing I would say, so one is that, and then the second would be some sort of gift when it comes to organization, project management, and getting people on the same page. So when you took it's okay if I share something
Yeah,
about your results. So when you
sure.
took my superpower quest, you're a dreamer leader. The dreamer is creative, right? And so that's the source of your storytelling and your creativity and looking at things from a different perspective, right? Like that's the dreamer. The leader gets people on the same page and gets the team moving in the right direction so the right things can happen, right?
Hmm.
So they care about order, right? But the order is we got to be clear, we got to be concise, everybody's got to understand. Nobody's got it. We don't want anybody left out. We don't want
Hmm.
anybody doing a bunch of stuff that's different from what the team is doing. Right? Like that's that dreamer leader gifting. So I think to be in your role, you need to either have the dreamer leader gifting. And for anybody out there that wants to have your employees take my Superpower Quest survey, it's a superpowerquest.com/survey. And I'm happy to, that's kind of just a voluntary thing that I do where I'd love to help you evaluate people. But bottom line, I say a dreamer leader or a dreamer organizer. I think an organizer is much more systems driven, but I think would have the similar effect in the organization in terms of being able to both dream and execute and get everybody on the same page and be a steward of the story and the
Yeah.
message of the story.
If I could have picked a third, it would have been organization.
It would have. Okay, so organizer. So right, that's the gifting that dreamer leader organizer is. It's hard to beat that when it comes to getting people on the same page with a clarified understanding, which I think is the gift, right?
Hmm.
Especially if it's done in a way where the sales team perceives it as this person's for us.
Exactly. That's something that I always try to make sure that they know is I'm on their side. I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm just here to help them get it done.
Right. Which is more of a project manager role. Like a project manager isn't like your boss.
Exactly.
Project manager is your equipper.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I've got to go because I have another call coming up in a minute. But thank you so much for letting me interview you and for sharing the wisdom with just you're generous and I appreciate you, Kelsey. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
All right. Awesome. Take care.
You too.